Despite its status as a worldwide economic powerhouse, the United States relies significantly on imports in a number of critical areas for its continuing success. From raw resources and energy to food, drinks, and skilled labor, the U.S. economy is heavily reliant on foreign commerce. This has been true for decades, with global trade serving as the foundation of the country's economic stability. However, President Donald Trump's America First stance has called into doubt the dynamics of U.S. imports. Trump's government has taken a strong stance in favor of reducing reliance on foreign products, imposing tariffs and trade restrictions on both rivals and friends, including Canada, the European Union, and China. The purpose was to change the trade balance in favor of local production, appealing to nationalist feelings while still protecting American companies. While these measures receive support from those calling for greater home manufacturing, they failed to recognize the intricate, interwoven structure of global commerce on which the U.S. economy is constructed. The fact is that the United States relies on foreign imports for far more than just consumer items. Essential resources like crude oil, rare earth metals, and natural gas are imported from other nations to meet the country's energy demands and support critical industries such as technology and defense. Furthermore, foreign talent, skilled labor, and inventive minds are critical to sustaining the country's competitive advantage in the global economy. One result of Trump's tariffs is that Canada, a major trading partner, is considering its own punitive measures. These might extend well beyond mere counter-tariffs. Given Canada's essential role in delivering energy and natural resources, its response might have a significant impact on the United States. Canada, for example, may restrict its oil and power exports, disrupting the American energy supply chain, despite being the greatest energy exporter to the United States. In 2024, the United States imported $129.5 billion in energy from Canada, which included oil, natural gas, electricity, and uranium. In the face of a potential 25% tax on Canadian imports, Canada is exploring a variety of countermeasures. Ontario, for example, is considering stopping electricity exports to the United States, namely to areas such as Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, which rely on Canadian power. Ontario provides a major percentage of New York's power, around 21% at peak hours. Cutting off these supplies might impact millions of American households and raise energy bills, particularly during peak consumption seasons such as winter and summer. Ontario is also contemplating alternative remedies, such as banning U.S.-made alcohol from its markets and enforcing stronger mineral regulations. Bourbon, whiskey, and American craft beer, all popular in Canadian markets, might be targeted. The overall value of American whiskey shipments to Canada surpassed $154 million in 2022, with Ontario being the main client. Banning these exports would harm American distilleries and brewers who rely on Canadian demand. On a bigger scale, Canada is considering putting taxes on a wide range of American imports. This is comparable to the measures implemented in 2018, when Canada reacted with $16.6 billion Canadian dollars and $12.6 billion US dollars in tariffs. Steel and aluminum products, agricultural items such as pigs, apples, and dairy, and key raw materials utilized in many businesses throughout the United States are among the current target goods. Canada is the United States' second-largest source of key minerals, including cobalt, nickel, and lithium, accounting for around 25% of imports. These minerals are essential for manufacturing batteries and electric cars, among other technologies. Limiting or taxing these exports might cause significant disruptions in U.S. companies that depend on Canadian resources. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has also proposed a more draconian measure, prohibiting power exports to the United States. This change might have a significant influence on the electrical grids in Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. In 2023, Ontario exported around 7,000 gigawatt-hours of power to the United States. New York alone imports 21% of its power from Ontario, emphasizing Canada's vital role in delivering consistent energy for numerous locations. A disruption in this supply chain might result in volatility and increased prices for millions of American consumers. Canada is also considering excluding U.S. corporations from competing on Canadian government contracts, which would have an impact on areas such as construction, technology, and defense, where American firms have a major presence. With more than 200 billion Canadian dollars in government procurement spending each year, such a move would transfer contracts to local or other overseas providers. This would benefit not only American enterprises, but also Canadian sectors, and be consistent with the country's Buy Canadian approach. In response to U.S. worries about illegal immigration and drug trafficking, Canada is contemplating raising border security funding. Over 1 billion Canadian dollars might be used to improve surveillance, personnel, and the formation of a combined task force with U.S. authorities. This policy would meet the United States' security concerns while demonstrating Canada's commitment to bilateral cooperation on common topics. In terms of energy imports, the United States continues to rely largely on foreign suppliers, despite increasing domestic energy output. Crude oil imports, notably from Canada, are vital to servicing the country's energy needs. In 2024, the United States imported over 6.1 million barrels of crude oil per day, with Canada accounting for roughly 67% of that total. The majority of this oil is carried via large pipelines, such as the Keystone XL and the Enbridge Mainline, highlighting Canada's importance to the United States energy supply. In addition to crude oil, the United States imports large quantities of refined petroleum products, such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. These imports are especially critical for locations like the East Coast, which have limited refining capability. Furthermore, the United States imports natural gas from Canada, which is essential for heating and power generation in the Northeast, especially during the winter. Canada's natural gas exports, which total 7.4 billion cubic feet per day, assure steady energy supply and price stability in the United States. In conclusion, while the America First strategy may seek to lessen reliance on foreign commerce, the United States and its closest trading partners, such as Canada, are inextricably linked. Trade restrictions, tariffs, and retaliatory measures might have far-reaching implications, particularly in industries such as energy, technology, and defense, where cross-border trade is critical. In 2024, the United States imported around 38.92 terawatt-hours of power to meet growing energy demand and occasional domestic supply constraints. More than 95% of this comes from Canada, with hydropower being the dominant source, making it a dependable and ecologically good alternative. The rest came from Mexico, which supplied energy to regions along the United States-Mexico border. States like New York and Michigan were significantly reliant on Canadian power, with New York importing around 21% of its energy from Ontario. These imports were critical during extreme weather events, preventing blackouts and ensuring system stability when indigenous power supplies were depleted. Meanwhile, coal imports contributed for less than 1% of total U.S. energy imports in 2024, with around 4 million short tons of coal arriving mostly from Colombia, Indonesia, and Australia, and being utilized primarily for industrial uses such as steel manufacture. Furthermore, uranium imports were required to fuel the United States' 93 nuclear reactors, which collectively generated around 20% of the country's electricity. The United States imported around 50 million pounds of uranium in 2024, largely from Canada, Kazakhstan, and Australia. However, with the 2024 restriction on Russian uranium imports, which previously supplied 27% of the enriched uranium used in U.S. reactors, the U.S. is looking for other sources and focusing more on local uranium enrichment. Let's have a brief break. If you love this material, we'd appreciate it if you could click the like button. It allows us to reach more viewers. Please feel free to express your ideas in the comments section below. Regarding oil, Canada is now considering its reaction to anticipated U.S. tariffs on Canadian oil. One option under discussion is to cease or reduce oil shipments to the United States, which could have far-reaching ramifications for both countries. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has proposed using energy as leverage, including stopping power exports to the United Regions, which may harm up to 1.5 million American consumers, particularly in energy-dependent regions such as Michigan and Wisconsin. However, Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, is opposed to reducing oil exports, stating that it would significantly affect Canada's economy because Alberta is the largest producer of crude oil sent to the United States. Smith has warned that such a move would disrupt Canada's energy sector, resulting in job losses and economic chaos. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has advocated for a more cautious approach, including tariffs on U.S. goods such as steel and aluminum, to protect Canada's economy while avoiding further escalation of tensions. In response to these economic issues, Premier Ford called a snap election on February 27th, citing it as a chance to win a mandate for dealing with U.S. tariffs. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who is also a serious contender to succeed Trudeau, has threatened to react against the U.S. should the tariffs go through. He has underlined that such tariffs might affect both nations and advised that Canada look for new trading partners to lessen its dependency on the U.S. market. Meanwhile, a grassroots movement arose in Canada, with an Ottawa entrepreneur creating "Canada is not for sale" hats in response to former President Trump's tariff threats. These hats gained traction after Premier Ford wore one at a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau, resulting in an increase in orders and igniting a national debate over Canada's economic sovereignty. Economically, the planned tariffs have contributed to a rise of the Canadian dollar, with the loonie increasing 0.2% versus the US dollar, suggesting investor anxiety about the levy's impact. Political unity in Canada has been striking, with provincial leaders from all political parties joining together to oppose the tariffs and back retaliatory actions. If Canada reduced oil shipments to the United States, the economic consequences would be severe for both countries. For the United States, it would disrupt energy supply chains, particularly in states such as Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin that rely on Canadian crude oil and electricity. These states will most certainly experience shortages and higher energy bills, with far-reaching consequences for the U.S. economy. For Canada, the economic toll would also be substantial. Crude oil exports are an important income source, and a decline might hinder GDP growth, raise unemployment, and put strain on provincial budgets, notably in Alberta. The political impact may be considerable, hurting U.S.-Canada ties and delaying trade discussions under the USMCA. Meanwhile, Mexico is taking its own retaliatory actions in reaction to the U.S. tariffs. A proposed 25% tariff aims to reduce migrant arrivals and the flow of synthetic fentanyl into the United States. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has stated that Mexico may put taxes on U.S. imports, thereby worsening tensions between the two countries. Mexico is also seeking methods to minimize its trade imbalance and develop its economy by increasing domestic output and attracting international investment. Initiatives like the Mexico Plan focus on increasing industries such as automotive and aerospace, reducing the country's reliance on imports. The economic repercussions of the planned U.S. tariffs on Mexico might be severe, with estimates indicating that they could result in the loss of around 400,000 U.S. jobs, notably in areas such as automobile production, which are strongly interconnected between the two nations. Finally, if Canada decides to cut off power exports to the United States, the consequences will be far-reaching for both countries. Canada is critical to the dependability of the United States energy system, especially in the Northeast and Midwest. Any reduction in electricity imports will result in increased energy costs, supply constraints, and maybe even power outages. Rising energy rates may put a burden on household finances in the United States, particularly in areas that rely on Canadian power. The disruption might also result in higher operational expenses for industries such as manufacturing and technology, delaying economic development and perhaps boosting inflation. Such steps might affect Canada's economy and jeopardize its economic partnership with the United States. Any significant disruption in energy exports could destabilize the North American energy market, jeopardizing both countries' long-term economic prospects. That's all for today's video. We hope you found this discussion informative. If you did, please like and subscribe to stay updated on our future content. Thanks for viewing, and we hope to see you again soon.